Welcome back to the In the Clinic podcast with Rob. And today, what we're really going over is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. How does this relate to you? How is it more common than is typically thought? And three, how do you truly prevent this from wreaking havoc in your life as well as the people that you love? But before we get started, let's fire into current events that we've been going through right now. We just came off our 2024 Big Bash event. Yes, this was our biggest event of the year. This is for our Premier Personal Training members. We come into a full celebration with their friends, family, and our best physical therapy clients. And this was transformational for a lot of people because we brought in an entertainment company that made it a casino night, and people were able to play all of the casino style games, to acquire chips to put in for our raffle. And we gave away televisions, iPads. We gave away discounts on our memberships. We gave away TRX straps, Bossus, exercise equipment. So it was just over the top. People had a ton of fun. I got to meet a lot of great people I hadn't met yet. And overall, it was so fantastic to see the smiles on people's faces, to see the way that we're making an impact in individuals. And truly what hit home to me is when we gave away our Specialized Fitness Awards to our Premier Personal Training members. We had 6 different awards. We gave these away. Then the first person that came up was Chris Miller, and she was emotional and she was appreciative, and she was thankful for the acknowledgement that we gave her for this award, which she truly earned. So above anything, it was an excellent time to be a part of our membership, to be a part of the unit that helps feed itself, to be a part of people that truly love to enhance their fitness, their wellness. So across the board, it was a great night. And at the end of the night, my whole staff, about 90% of them, were still in attendance. And when we released everybody to just dancing on the dance floor, at the end of the night, the only people that were still there, about 90% of our staff, dancing together, running around in circles and doing different dances together. It was fantastic, a ton of fun, something that I'll remember forever, and was well worth it for the time, energy, and effort that we put into it. So what we're really going over today is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. But before we get into non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, we really got to understand why it's a concern overall. And truly, what about just fatty liver disease? So to understand fatty liver disease, we really have to look at the end game, which is death. So fatty liver disease can ultimately lead to death in ourselves because it damages the liver. So the fatty liver disease, the step below death, is cirrhosis. So we've heard of cirrhosis before, and we know that individuals that are excessive drinkers end up with some level of fatty liver disease, which then eventually turns into cirrhosis. So what is cirrhosis? Cirrhosis is where we get scarring to the liver. And the scarring occurs from repeated damage to the liver, primarily through fatty liver issues. So why would an individual with excessive alcohol drinking get fatty liver disease? Well, one of the primary reasons is that the alcohol itself truly is a poison. And it's a poison that has to be detoxified out of the body. So when we detoxify it out of the body, which organ is doing that? The liver. So the liver, as it goes through the blood and it tries to extract alcohol out of the system, it tries to metabolize it. And metabolizing meaning breaking down the key parts that we can use for nutrients, but also to try and excrete it and get rid of it, usually through the urine. So the difficulty is that alcohol truly can't be fully metabolized by the liver. So what happens is the liver goes, oh, what do we do with this? It ends up converting it over to fat. And by converting over to fat, it has nowhere to put it, so it just deposits it around the liver, and we call this the viscera. So within the abdominal cavity, it starts placing fat there, and this is now known as visceral fat. So visceral fat is the most dangerous type of fat that you can put on your body because it truly chokes out your organs of your body. It doesn't function in the same way as the subcutaneous fat that you're going to get under the skin. So it's not going to be as successful in energy utilization, but it's also more dangerous because it now chokes off all of your other organs. So the key for us is we want to avoid visceral fat, but more so we want to avoid fatty liver disease. So let's look at this progression. We have fatty liver disease, then we get cirrhosis, which then leads to death. So fatty liver disease overall is primarily found through the accumulation of deposits of fat from excessive alcohol drinking. Now, when we're talking about excessive, this is day after day in abundance for years, continues to escalate that fat deposit around the liver, which eventually starts choking off the liver, and then the liver starts scarring from damage. That scarring leads to cirrhosis, which leads to death. So what do we do about this? And how does it relate to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? Well, if we look over more recent decades, there's been a dramatic shift. Roughly 1 in 3 people in the United States has non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And they abbreviate this NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. This number is continuing to climb year after year, and it's really unlikely to stop in its prevalence. So the part about this continuing to grow is that clinically, the disease is really silent in its early stages. You don't feel any symptoms. You don't have any type of signs that you're getting fatty liver disease. It's usually more acquired through a blood test and then a liver biopsy, possibly an ultrasound that can start showing the signs of fatty liver disease. So this is really remarkable. A disease that is practically unheard of 30 to 40 years ago is now becoming the most common liver disorder in the Western countries. So if you think about fatty liver disease, you think about diabetes, you think about obesity, these are all markers that have dramatically increased exponentially in the 19th to 20th century. So as you start looking in the early 1900s, we started seeing more and more and more of a climb, all the way to where now it's a growing pandemic. And anywhere that you find countries adopting a Western style of nutrition, you're seeing a prevalence of obesity, diabetes, and fatty liver disease. So when you look at those three combined, why? Why are we getting this? What is the common thread? So we have to come back to and start talking about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So why are we getting non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and what is it? So essentially we give the term non-alcoholic fatty liver disease to any type of disease that is causing fatty liver that's not from alcohol. Pretty basic. But the key is why this would occur. So let's kind of unravel how people are getting this. So if you start looking at table sugar, you start looking at fructose, you start looking at how it's metabolized in the body. Well, fructose itself, much like alcohol, cannot be fully metabolized. So what happens is your body brings that into the liver, it tries to detoxify it out, tries to metabolize it down. It can't be fully metabolized. So what occurs? We get the same process. We get fatty deposits put around the liver because the body, the liver itself, does not know what to do with all this fructose. It can't excrete it. It can't get rid of it. It's just stuck there. So it converts it to fat, which then places it around the liver. Well, that sounds exactly like alcohol. So when you start looking at alcohol and fructose, they're working at the same capacity. And that is why you are seeing individuals that have never really drank in their life or never drank in their life developing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That's why we're also seeing a higher incidence of individuals that are getting non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So let's peel back fructose itself. So fructose is a sugar. It's primarily a fruit sugar. You'll find it in apples, oranges, and all of your different fruits. So why is this so prevalent to where people are getting it? What's the common thread here? Well, if you look at fructose, it is really found in table sugar. And table sugar is a combination of glucose and fructose mixed together, and they call that sucrose. So all of your table sugar that you're finding in all of your foods, from your breads to your processed meals to anything that has table sugar in it, will have fructose in it. Your soft drinks, your Gatorades, your meals will have sugar placed in them. So by you consuming that sugar, think of it as every time you're having the fructose, you're really, in a way, drinking alcohol in the same capacity. It's not going to be metabolized well. So it's going to be placed around the liver and it's going to be developing fat deposits. Those fat deposits will sit in the viscera, which will start choking off your organs, will create scarring to the liver. So if we look at fructose itself, does that mean that we should never eat fruit? No. Because the thing about fruit is that when you bite that apple or bite that orange, it has fiber within the fruit itself. So fiber within the fruit is now actually, while your body is trying to ingest that, your stomach is breaking it down, it goes into your intestines. As your intestines try and absorb that fructose, the lining of that fiber that starts going into the intestine lines the intestine itself. It lines it around the edges with the soluble and insoluble fiber and helps prevent fructose absorption. So a lot of this is excreted through the body and it never even gets put into your blood. So if you look at the natural properties of actually eating your fruits, it does wonders. Plus it feeds your gut biome because it wants that fiber, it wants to eat on it. And a healthy gut biome helps all of your systems overall. So the key is we can eat the fruit, but what about when we drink it? So when you take an orange or an apple and you compress all of it down and only get the juice out of it, you're getting all of the fructose, but you're not getting the fiber. So what happens? It gets absorbed. So by drinking fructose straight, now that's equivalent to drinking alcohol without the effects on your psychological side. But the key is you're still going to get the fatty liver disease effects over time. There's a phenomenal study in 2009 that explored the effects of fructose versus glucose on visceral fat. And the subjects received drinking either fructose or glucose. And surprisingly, the subjects all gained fat. Didn't matter which one they drank. However, the interesting detail is where the fat was accumulated. See, the individuals that drank the glucose only developed more subcutaneous fat. The individuals that drank the fructose developed more visceral fat. So the key is we already consume several times more fructose than just a generation ago. Other than sugar, which again is half fructose, the culprit is also because we love our fruit juices. We see it as a healthy drink. But all that fructose is truly just pure. All that apple juice, all that juice you're drinking is just pure fructose. So now we can see that even at a young age, we're getting so much fructose as well as our sodas being put into our system at a very young age so that we're seeing individuals in their 20s with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So hopefully that at least prompts you to think twice about giving your kids juice, pop, and other Gatorades that will put so much fructose into the systems of the people that you love. So let's dig a little deeper. What is the catalyst behind a lot of this? Why are individuals getting fatty liver disease from fructose? What's really going on there? So if we start looking at the association between fatty liver disease and insulin resistance, it's profound. Because being insulin resistant is the strongest known predictor of developing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It increases the risk by having it by 15 times compared to insulin sensitive people. So while almost all obese individuals have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, even lean people, if they're insulin resistant, have a substantial greater likelihood of developing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease as well. In fact, if a lean person is diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it is almost certain that the person has insulin resistance and will eventually develop type 2 diabetes without intervention. Because fatty liver disease was once considered to be really nothing more than a benign side effect of other diseases. But recent studies refute this idea. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is a gateway to more serious and potentially life-threatening diseases, all of which are really associated with insulin resistance. So once a person develops non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, the liver can later become inflamed. And if chronic, can lead to scarring to the liver itself, and that's where we get that fibrosis and cirrhosis. Because half of the people with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease are already getting fibrosis. It's already starting to break down. 1/5 of people with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease will develop cirrhosis. And then that leads to liver failure, and either they need a transplant or there's death. So the key for individuals that they have to start managing this fatty liver disease. But why does it contribute to insulin resistance as well? Well, if we look at insulin resistance, the liver itself is really the first place where insulin resistance starts to occur. Why? Because as the body absorbs sugar from the intestine and it starts going into the bloodstream, the first place that it hits to detoxify it is what? The liver. So the liver starts recognizing that, wow, there's an abundance of sugar here. And it's also recognizing that the body is producing insulin. And anytime insulin is present, the body says, hey, we need to take the blood sugar out of the bloodstream and we need to deposit it. And the liver does that. The liver takes it out of the bloodstream, insulin's present, it starts putting it into the cells, large chains called glycogen. These are long storage chains of sugar. And when that occurs, well, the body will then see a drop in blood sugar in the bloodstream. But what if it continues to come? What if it continues to come? What if it keeps removing it, keeps removing it, keeps removing it? Well, then the second one is to take that glycogen that's already there and that sugar and then convert it to fat. Because fat is really your large warehouse of energy. That's where all of it's going to occur. The glycogen is like having food on the shelf. It's there, you can go and get it. Glucose is like having food in your hand. I can eat it now versus glycogen. I have a big storage facility at the grocery store, and then the warehouse, the Costco's that has everything, then big abundance. Well, that is your fat storage. So the key here is the more you become insulin resistant, things are going to change. So insulin resistance really occurs when all the cells in that organ, so the liver, the muscle, the other tissues of the body, it starts saying, geez, insulin, you're overpowering us. You're just constantly sending us a signal that says we need to store, store, store. But before I get into that, well, why? Why are we constantly getting a response of insulin? Well, insulin itself is constantly being produced because either A, we're never stop eating. So we have breakfast, then we have a snack, and then we have a cookie that's sitting by our desk, and then we have lunch, and then we have a donut in the afternoon, and then we have dinner, and then we have a midnight snack, and right before I go to bed, I have some cereal. So we're constantly eating, and certain foods are triggering inflammation, but also that sugar, fructose that we talked about, which creates more inflammation. So the body is getting this constant response that says, insulin, do its job, do your job, do your job, more insulin, more insulin. And insulin is a storing hormone. It stores fat. It tells the body to take that blood glucose and store it as fat. Store it for later. So to constantly have insulin present, then the cells have to listen to it. It is the second most powerful hormone in the body next to cortisol. So insulin is constantly telling the cells, do this, store, store, store. But the cells eventually are like, wow, this is too hard for me to constantly do. Normally, we don't have to do this all day. Now we're doing it all the time. I'm getting overloaded. So the cells themselves become resistant to insulin. It can't tell the pancreas to stop. It can't tell the pancreas turn off, but it can just stop its response to it. So it becomes insulin resistant. It starts holding off. I'm not going to take as much. I'm not going to respond to your hormone receptor. When insulin comes, I'm not going to respond to it so much. It needs to have a higher threshold before I listen to it. So what occurs is that first happens in the liver. The liver starts becoming insulin resistant first because it first comes in contact with an abundance of fructose and sugar. So as it's trying to constantly store fat to get rid of the amount of blood glucose in the bloodstream, it stores it at fat. But it becomes insulin resistant too. It says, this is too much, too much. So what happens is you constantly get more elevated circulating blood sugars because it can't always bring it down. But what you also get is in the liver is eventually you're getting this abundance of fat accumulation that's around the liver. And at some point the liver goes, geez, this is too much. I keep storing it and it keeps coming. I can't keep up with this. I just can't keep up. So now what happens is the liver starts releasing the fat that it's accumulating in abundance. It starts releasing that fat back into the bloodstream. So now what? Now you get circulating triglycerides in your bloodstream. Now when you go get a blood test, it's like, why are my triglycerides so high? That's because the liver can't keep storing it forever. It can't, there's too much. That's why you see the tire around the middle. Sometimes the big balloon around the middle, that's all visceral fat that's been storing from alcohol, sugar, or other mechanisms that cause fat accumulation in the viscera. So we're seeing a greater precedence set for more individuals developing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease because of these mechanisms. And what does it all come down to? Insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is chronically driving this process. So what do we get out of it? Well, one, we first start getting insulin resistance from too much circulating insulin. Number two, we start getting fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic. So we start getting fatty liver disease putting deposits around, and then it starts putting in our abdomen. So what do we see? We start getting puffy around the middle. We start getting more love handles. We start getting the protruding abdomen. We start seeing that visually. So we start getting obesity, which creates its own inflammatory effect. So then the last effect is what? The liver can't keep up, so it starts pushing triglycerides back into the bloodstream. It can't keep up. So we start seeing higher triglycerides on our blood analysis. And our cholesterol levels are out of whack. and it all is coming from insulin resistance. So the key for us is, how do we prevent this? How do we stop fatty liver disease? Well, one, really remove fructose from your diet. Get rid of table sugar and stop eating processed foods, because all processed foods have sugar, which is cheap, and salt, which is cheap. And then it has seed oils, which is cheap. And that way they can keep the price down so you'll buy more. But all three drive inflammation in your body that contributes to insulin resistance. So that's number one. Number two, we need to generate a better sense of health related to insulin resistance. Timed eating is a great one. We will have a podcast moving forward on timed eating and what that means for insulin resistance. That's necessary. And then three, we have to drive down inflammation in our body, which again, we'll get into seed oils. So from seed oils to fructose, which includes high fructose corn syrup, which is taking fructose and just putting on steroids. And that's then, your liver won't keep up with that one. Drives massive inflammation in your body, creates way more oxidative stress. So the key for us is getting back to whole foods that we can actually make ourselves, that don't come in a box or a package, that allow us to eat nutritious meals that aren't packed with sugar. So truly minimize your sugar, minimize your processed foods, get rid of your seed oils, start eating more butter, fat, as far as butter, tallow, coconut oil, olive oil. Start driving those into your body instead of your seed oils, which are your sunflower oils, your canola oils, your safflower oils, all these other oils that have been touted as healthy. Get rid of those. So all in all, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is a growing problem. If you're already starting to notice that tire around your stomach, there's a good chance that you're developing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and it's all stemming from insulin resistance. So continue to stay tuned as I go through more insulin resistance and the strategies that you can put into actual action now, that you can take care of that so that you'll be able to, one, see your waistline shrink, two, you're going to see your triglyceride levels change, three, you're going to have more abundance of energy, and four, it will probably improve your sleep as well, which usually happens. So all in all, continue to stay tuned as I give you more information that helps you with your insulin resistance. But stay strong, stay healthy, continue to let the sunshine hit your face. It's more powerful than you'll ever imagine. And keep fighting the good fight. See you next time.